program with the first keynote session. Before we start, I would like to give a short introduction about this distinguished speaker. Professor Emeritus Dr. Zaharin Yusof is a Fellow of the Academy of Sciences Malaysia and is currently a Computational Linguistics Professor at International Medical University IMU. In his years at USM, he had been the founding dean for both the School of Computer Sciences and of Research ICT platform. Apart from that, he has also published numerous papers, won many research and commercialization grants, graduated many postgraduate students, and led various initiatives nationally and internationally. Today, we are fortunate to have with us the distinguished Professor Emeritus Dr. Zaharin Yusof, who will give us the talk with the title, Graduate on Time. With that, we'd like to invite Professor Emeritus Dr. Zaharin Yusof on stage to present his talk.
Assalamualaikum and good morning. Good thing you took the drone away, because I always, when I see drones, I kick it. Because I was in UPNM, that's a defense university, and they use the drones to spy on academic staff. So I smoke in with my monkeys, and I train the monkeys to jump on the drones. All right. Yeah, I was about to say it's nice to be back, but when I was here, this was not around. Actually, I don't even recognize. This is Bayan Baru, is it? I don't recognize anything. Anyway, I was here until 2005. 25 years at USM. At that time, most of you were not born yet. But I have been there since I left, so my advice to a lot of staff, I said, don't ever leave. Because once you leave, you keep on moving. And I actually tried retirement after Sunway, but I was dug out by my former classmate. I said, no, you still work. All right, now at IMU, I know nothing about medical, but anyway. Right. I'm going to go through for, some salient points about doing postgraduate study. I hear you have 252 PhDs. Don't send them to me to examine. Because I don't want to do 252. I average one thesis per month since 1990. So I've gone through about over 500 theses. So I'm retiring. Actually right now, at this moment, I have 7 theses to read through. Okay, where are we? Hey. No, I'm trying to move the slides. Point where? Oh, why is it not working? Okay lah. Forget this. Anyway, I will verbalize most of it. Just next. All right. Salient points. First components for graduate on time is academic. It is academic. It's not about application. So when you do your PhD or master's, focus on the academic contribution rather than the application. And a lot has to do with presentation. You have to present it well, because otherwise people don't know what you're working. There are lots of students who tend to have, I call it verbal diarrhea. They just write, whatever comes to mind, they write. And then I have one reading now, it reads like a user manual. So let's go through what you should write. Next. Okay, first of all, something general on R&D and presentation. We are scientists, we are computer science, so follow this. Don't do general social science style. Social science, they tell stories and they hope that the reader will make the conclusion. When you write, you declare first. You declare, then you justify, and you highlight the main points. And you summarize at the end. This is how you should present. You declare first, it's also for yourself. When you want to write a paragraph, write your main point first. Always do that. And this is what we do when we do research. We observe. Either we observe real life, we observe models, and then we observe other applications. Go on. And you hypothesize. In every thesis, there must be a hypothesis. You must claim something, and then you have to justify that. And you model, you hypothesize, you find a model, and then you test it. These are the processes. And you have to make this process very, very clear in your thesis. And when you present at your viva, you do the same. Next. So this is, what you do is you look for generic components when you observe. Usually generic components come in terms of entities and processes. Those are the two things that you look for. What are the components and what are the processes? And then you formulate how process modify the entity, how the processes modify the entities, how they combine. It's the architecture. So you make claims, you observe, you make claims, and then you arrange, and then you test. Your model should be able to predict or show. So this is what you do when you do research. Next. Another way of looking at it is you observe, you look at the problems, and you look for tools. Tools either you take from other people, or you build yourself, you hypothesize. When you, I claim that these can happen. And you have to make that very, very clear. Your claim should be that what you have done is more generic, it has wider application, or it is better. And to be better, it's better in terms of quality, or in terms of accuracy, or efficiency. Make that very, very clear. And you model, you test. When you formulate, you either formulate a model. Model means it is formal. Or a framework will do. A framework is more like an architecture or a technique. These are the things. So all these points should come out in your introduction. You have to make it very, very clear in your introduction so that the examiners can then see where you're going, right? And this is very, very key. Have this table. This table is very key because this is how the thesis you should write following this. And the examiners will read following this table. And then the evaluation also will follow this table. So in a sense, when you give this table, you are forcing the examiner to look at the table and then tick as you go along. Masters normally has 2 or 3 lines. These are 2 or 3 lines. For PhD, 3 or 4 lines. And then when you write your thesis, you follow this pattern, always. So this table actually will, what's it called? Will fix the way of thinking, of reading the thesis. So have this table. Right, next. So, okay, some fundamentals. This is how you go along. Yeah. You have research proposal. I think this is the same here. Things haven't changed. You have research proposal. There is a minimum period. There is a maximum period. I think full-time now, minimum is 2 years. Or has it gone up? It's 2 years. Huh? So 2 years. Maximum is 5. 5, huh? Okay, 5. So GOT is somewhere halfway through, about 3.5 years, GOT. So there should always be a check. Somebody should check. And then normally we would have a competent panel. These are the problems. Usually literature survey, thesis writing, mind mapping, presentation, language. Okay? So, all right, go ahead. This is your PhD or master's. You are here, you have to produce this, and then you get your PhD or master's. This is one of the smallest examination units you can ever have. You have usually 1 or 2 externals and 1 internal. Those are the 3 people you have to convince, that's all. And then to help, you have your supervisor and your co-supervisor. Just remember, you are writing, you have to write this, you have only 3 people to convince. So you have to write it very, very clearly, very, very well. Right. Next. Now, a thesis is a research document. It's not a project. It's a document, a research document. And the main thing is about the research. It is delta knowledge. You must make a difference to the knowledge. That is the key. And over all the 500 theses that I have read and all that, and I have examined and all that, we always look for what is the delta R. So when you write, you point that out immediately. What is your delta R? Now, the D is usage of knowledge. It is only a proof of concept. It is not the key. So therefore, don't be too proud of your application. You have to come up with what is your delta knowledge. Now, in R&D, for MSc, it's usually smaller R, big D. For there, you can still focus on the application for masters. But when you're doing PhD, it's the R, which is important. Big R, big D. For papers, depends on the journal. In industry, is normally the C is the big and D. Okay, we do R&D and C in the universities for knowledge creation, of course. That's our job. But it's also making our academic programs come alive. Last time, I used to give the exam papers. My exam questions are normally from the research. Right? Next. Oh yeah, it's also for supplementing income. Last time when I was dean, we had only 33 staff, but we were making 3 million in grants per year and 3 million in commercial projects every year. Right, so what do we do? But these are the main things. Introduction, the what, how, and why, then the literature survey or literature review. The main thing is to situate the contribution. You have to guide the reader, the examiners, that this is your contribution. This is the key chapter, the main contribution. This is where you develop the delta knowledge. Then you have implementation, test design and discussions, and then conclusion and future work. So the usual one is the main strength should be in your design, and then partly your implementation. But somehow you have to, if you want to, your main strength is in the implementation, then your implementation design must be very good. That is very key. So you may have some supervisors or some universities may have different styles, different chapters, but this is the essence, the 5. Next. Okay, this is some realities. Postgraduate programs should only be offered when there is expertise. So if there is no expertise, better not offer. And this is pragmatics. A master's or PhD is 25% supervisor. So supervisors, if you supervise, you contribute 25%. And 20% is normally the choice of the project. I've seen many who got stuck because wrong choice of projects. 25% is the actual work, only 25% the actual work, and 30% is on writing. This is a major focus, writing, presenting the thesis. Is this. The supervisor is also very key. So like Prof. Bari said, please contact your supervisor, keep in touch with your supervisor. But you will see, you will have here supervisors, some supervisors can be dictatorial, some supervisors are proactive, some are reactive, and some are passive. Students are also like that. Now, the red areas are no-no. If the supervisor is dictatorial and the student is also dictatorial, I don't think you ever graduate. Same here. Here and here. The green ones are the best ones. Okay? Now, so observe your supervisor, and supervisor observe the students, see which box you are in. Next. So what do you need? From a dictatorial supervisor, you normally have ready-made solutions. I know some of these people. Sometimes it's all ready. The student is there just to get to do the slave work. And they know and can arrange the external examiners. Proactive supervisor, they can give you the big picture, what problem to be solved, point out the R factor, and how to write. Reactive supervisors are those only when something is said, then they do something. Otherwise, they don't do anything. But they can point directions, where to go. They listen and advise accordingly, and they check your work. What you need from students, you must always listen and observe. Supervisors may not know everything, but you listen first and go and check. Go and check. Follow orders, but check everything. You have to be proactive and offer alternatives. Always offer alternatives. Just, if anything, just to check. Ask intelligent questions. I hate stupid questions. And then you have to write. For my students, for example, they start writing on day 1. Right? At least the table of contents. But if you have a passive supervisor, what you need is lots of luck. Okay, thanks. Okay, the essence. You must determine and make clear the concept of what you're doing. Right at the very beginning, what is it that you're doing? There are theses that I've read, like, it's like a storybook. Don't do that. Come very clean. You're not writing a novel. Get some level of proof, and you have to make clear whether this is original, or it is an extension of a previous work, it is an improvement, or you are doing a hybrid. Make it very clear at the very beginning. In fact, for my students, I ask them to write like this, with these points. Make it clear. And the deliverables must be very clear, whether it's a system, whether it's modules, or methodology, or process. Make very clear what are your deliverables. And R value. Point out what is your R value, what is your contribution, the research. Point it out. Don't let the examiner look for it. Usually it's 120 to 200 pages. Very difficult to find and it is for an examiner, it's very, very frustrating. You have to make it very clear to them. All this. The impact must also be very, very clear. It is either an addition to the body of knowledge, or it is an improvement, or it's economic, or social. So make all these points very clear. In fact, better still, you just take this, and then this should be in your introduction. If you can say all this in your introduction within a page and a half, the examiner will be very happy. I'll show you one example. I had to, there was one student, forgot from where, 3 supervisors tried and then gave up on him. And because I was dean, I had to take over. Then I took over, this was after 4 years. And then I sat down, because he knew the points, he just didn't know how to present. Then I show you the graph, some of the diagrams we did. We sent to the examiner. The examiners within 1 day responded. They said 3 diagrams. With 3 diagrams, they knew the thesis. There were 3 examiners said, knew the thesis, immediately passed. So how you present is very, very important. And you have to make these points very clear right at the beginning. You can even, for my students, I even say, use this slide, just write it down. And then after that, you can do your own stuff. But make sure it's very clear right at the very beginning. Next. Okay. This is my advice. You start by lajunya. Research proposal. You do your research proposal, which is actually the previous slide. Yeah, by right, you have to do it within 3 months. If you don't do it within 3 months, something is wrong with you mainly, or your supervisor. Is it 3 months usually? More than that? No. 3 months. 3 months. Now, you do your then you write your introduction. Well, of course, you literature survey, you have to do all the time. But it has to be very focused, targeted. Don't just read. And when you put in what you put in your thesis, don't show off. Just don't say, I've been to the library, I've read all this. You have to show why you put those in that literature survey. But you should write your introduction first. More for yourself, because you are going to lock yourself into that. You can come back and change, but always write the introduction first. Most want to start with implementation because they are happy programming and whatnot. Don't. You should not touch programming yet. Do the introduction, this is a way, and then do your main contribution. So this is a time scale. And only once you have started, almost finished your main contribution, then you start implementing. Because implementation is only as a proof of concept. It should not be the main part of the thesis. But you start writing up. You start writing just table of contents start, and you fill in the gaps. Because psychologically, it's actually very heartening to see that the thesis is growing. But although not written here, you should also start with in terms of PowerPoint first. You do PowerPoint first, and then after the PowerPoint, then you transfer that to, you see why PowerPoint is good? Because it's a square, it's a rectangular. Your thoughts, you are forced to squeeze your thoughts into that. And you have to put your message. Every slide has to have a message. So do the PowerPoint first. Right? So when you do your studies, always have the PowerPoint, but in the background have the text, thesis. Watch it grow. Right? So you do this, you have GOT. I can't remember how many students I've had. Nobody has exceeded 3 years. No one. 3 years. Follow this. All right. This is organizing of thesis. If you have questions, you can ask anytime. And what to expect in the Viva. Go. Okay. You've seen this. This is writing in general. Different ways of writing. But it's always the what, why, how, who, when, where, and how much or how many. That's what, when you write, it's about this. But you write differently. When you write a blueprint, I am called a serial road mapper because I blueprint everything everywhere I go. Like this. When you write papers, you do this, what, why, what difference. When you write executive version, you start with a problem statement, and then you give the solution, and then you tell the story. So, different ways of writing. But thesis writing is probably the best training you can ever have. Because it really, you have to, you train yourself. Next. Now, a thesis is a comprehensive document. It is not a textbook, nor a novel, not a user manual. So it is a very, very directed document. A thesis must show, you must show the mastery of your domain, especially through the literature survey. It must show the clarity of academic contribution and the ability to do independent work. In fact, that is a PhD. It's not the end of everything. A PhD is like a driving license. That means you can now drive on your own. A thesis is read, not experienced. The examiner is not first time reading it. So you have to guide the examiner how to read your thesis. Language and presentation is part of the evaluation. What, how, and why, these are very important. Usually, I've examined so many, I always read abstract first, introduction, and summary. And I know many examiners, they do the same. And then look for the main contribution, chapter 3. Implementation is always read last. Sometimes they don't even read the implementation. So don't spend too much time on that. A good implementation must include the design. Don't just put your code in there. The design must be very clear. Okay. What do we do as examiners? What do we look for in a viva? The candidate, we must show that the candidate did the work, because these days you can actually buy work from elsewhere. We have to check that. And mastery of the contents of the thesis. You have to know where you have written what. When you ask questions, don't start looking up the pages. You have to know. So you have to, examiners are looking for that. Okay. So these are the chapters. There may be different styles. Some universities have 6 chapters, but I would recommend this. This is a very, very standard worldwide. Okay, and then these are the points. In fact, for my students, I ask them, the table contents, I ask them to do this. This will be 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, but don't write what domain where in the domain. But you can start with that and replace. You just follow this, then the literature survey. So you have to have all this. And then literature survey or review, what have been done before, strictly. Don't show that you've been to the library and read everything. You have to show what have been done before, what is relevant to your study. You analyze their contributions. This is more situating your work. Show that there are gaps. Justify that there are gaps. That's why you're doing it. And then situate your work. This is mainly situating your work. For the main contribution, you design, give the implications, and point out why it is better. You have to. Implementation, just follow this. Like I say, it's never a focus. Implementation is never a focus. No need to take photos. You can have a copy. It's public domain. This is public domain. This has been presented at, I think, about 8, 10 universities. It changes all the time. Right, next. And then these are supporting documents. Usually, I would target about 100 to 140 pages, the main part, for the thesis main part, and the rest put into the list of figures, diagrams, references, appendices. Right, next. Okay, some details. In the introduction, remember, introduction is more for what domain, where in the domain, what is done. It's situating the research. Next. Okay. You situate the research via domain conceptualization. What domain you're working in. A diagram is always better. I'll show you examples. When you have a diagram, you just point. I'm working there. Essentially, you are saying, don't ask me questions anywhere else, because I'm working there. So you show domain conceptualization and point. If there is an existing roadmap, point as well. Bring this out. Because you have to situate your research. That should come out in your first paragraph of your thesis. Don't start telling stories first. There is a lot of tendency to talk about the problem. You situate first. You also, in the first chapter, you declare your methodology and contribution. What is your methodology? What is your approach, strategy? Diagrams help a lot. Like I said, the examiner, the 3 examiners that sent within one day, because of diagrams. Diagrams help a lot. Overall diagram, contributions, give contributions in point form, not in a paragraph. This is very, very key. You have to have this. In fact, the students I tend to examine, their supervisors always ask to do this. Same color also, green. And then chapter or chapter summary. You should have this in your first chapter. Next. Chapters in it, the main contributions will have to be made clear. And with a table like the following. Next. These are examples. This is next. Yeah. This is an example of a table. I think this was a student from, forgot already, I was helping. Unimas. Okay. Sunway, is it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, the slide was in Sunway. Okay. Multi-agent, yeah. Because then this will show, this will point out what you're doing. The contribution here is a framework and an algorithm. And this is the design and the framework. So when you write this table, each line is very key to show what your contributions will be. Okay, these are examples of domain conceptualization. You are welcome to use them. If I had copied from somewhere, I would put down the name. But the rest, I have worked with whoever I was working with. Examples, okay? So you are welcome to use this. This one came from Dr. Chia. So, like, you have this diagram. You can say, okay, I'm working, he was working on this tacit knowledge acquisition here. Then you can point. So he had this, his thesis. By the way, his thesis got 1, number 1, i.e. no changes, perfect. And wherever I teach research methodology, I always use his thesis as the exemplar thesis. And point where you, or here, or here, or here, or here. If you are pointing outside, is not a PhD. in the red box, this is more social science. We are supposed to work in science. This is for knowledge management. Next. This is my own domain, language technology. Then this is about going from text or speech all the way to knowledge. And these are the tools. So for my students working, easy, point. Working on which one? So if you have a domain conceptualization, good, use it. If you don't have one, create one. Because it's very, very easy for examiners to know. Next. This is for computer networks. I think things have changed since then. This one with Hua Yong, Dr. Chan Hua Yong. Remember, this slide existed during his time. So he was working where were you? Here? Yes. Load balancing. Yeah. Okay. So it's so easy. Say, then color this point, put an arrow. So easy. And it will help the examiner, because sometimes the examiners are not exactly from the domain. So if you give this, it helps them. Is that you? Yes. Yes, you. Yeah. Okay. Huh? Yeah, okay. This is all this came from real previous from staff. This was because last time people talking about working on security, but these guys and these guys don't talk the same language. They don't understand each other. So you have this, then you show where you're working, if you're working on security. You see, if you look at this, there's so many. And really, they don't understand each other. Okay? Next. Here is, this is with Prof. Habibah, bioinformatics. Actually, I sat with her over lunch. Many, Prof. Habibah, now the Dean of Pharmacy, sat with her, and then I came up with this diagram, and she said, Prof, if I had this diagram, I would have gotten the PhD within 2 years, she said. I said, all this came from you. Before bioinformatics, I knew nothing. So, but here, now, this is being used. I see this diagram coming up. Now one of PhD is a staff at IMU, and she was presenting. I said, "Hey, I know this diagram." The same thing. It's just to show where working here or working here, working here. So, in fact, this was we did this because we want to show what green computing, right, with Habibah as well. Yeah. In bioinformatics, yes. Okay. So if there is light, you are welcome to use this. Otherwise, start to create one. And that's a roadmap. This is a 19 next roadmaps. If there is a roadmap, also show. Example, this is still valid. Next. This is for telemedicine, 1997. It's still being used now because it's not implemented yet. In fact, the chairman of IMU is Tan Sri Abu Bakar. Tan Sri Abu Bakar was the Director General when we were doing this. And then he was also responsible to dig me out from retirement to work at IMU. He asked me, restart, reboot. Try to reboot this. Yeah? And then you can point. Next. This is for knowledge technology. So if you look at this carefully, really you can point where you are working. Whether in knowledge acquisition or you are working in, what's it called, applications, everywhere. This is also used in many places. Next. Yeah. Okay, so that will be, for chapter 1 is situating your research. And then you point where you are working, what your contributions are, chapter 1. You also give your overall methodology in chapter 1 as well. Always a diagram would help. Helps you more than the reader, but it also helps the reader. Because if you don't know how to get there, that means if you don't know how to get to your results, the examiner also won't know. So, okay, go. This is from a student years ago, working on language processing. You give this diagram. This is the overall methodology in building a multilingual dictionary. Okay. Next. This was the students that I took over. This one diagram helped for the examiners to show what he was targeting doing an agent pattern driven business engineering. And then in order to do that, you have to work backwards, follow the arrows. So when he presented this, so when he wrote the thesis, it would be following this flow. Build this, build this, build this. Build that. In fact, the examiners told me when he saw this diagram, he knew what was coming. So therefore, he just needed to skim through the thesis. Next. And the same student, a chapter by chapter summary. This was the other diagram that the examiner loved, the examiner's liked. This chapter by chapter, of course there will be a text version, but with this diagram, it shows where the chapters are. This one is to show which domains is coming. So this is the chapter 2, which domains. And then the main contribution is here, chapter 3, and then, so chapter by chapter summary in a diagram form helps a lot. Okay. And then when it's written, it's also written following this. Okay. Next chapter is chapter 2, literature survey. So all those points have to be in chapter 1. Situating and justifying the research, literature survey or literature review. Next. Yeah. Your target is to situate the research, questions and objectives. Because you've put your research questions and objectives in your table, you have to justify those. Why the questions are raised. So your literature survey is really guided. It must justify this. It's also for collecting the methods that you want to reuse. And then general points on literature review, never more than needed. Don't show off that you've read everything. Quickly focus to the related ones only. There is a tendency that some students, for example, spend 3 years just doing literature review. Then, very recent ones, you have to have a few recent ones because this is a favorite question by examiners. Oh, your literature review is so old. Favorite. Because they have no other questions, so they ask them. Okay. Because as an examiner, you are expected to ask something. Okay. Analyze the contributions. Make comparisons between the approaches when you do your review. And it's important to do an abstract. you don't just list, you abstract, you summarize what is it. Because you are essentially trying to justify why you are doing your work. List the features within the categories, and in order to show that your proposal is better. Next. So that part is what others have done, show that it has not been done before, plus techniques from others. Give you some examples. Next. Yeah. These are coming from thesis. Then, if you put in table form, it helps to read, examiners to read. For example, this one, I asked the person, these are not my students, I help other supervisors. I think this was either UPNM or what's it called? Sarawak, Unimas. Then give the traditional approaches first. This is for machine learning. Next. And then this is for machine learning approaches towards deep reinforcement learning. This literature survey. Next. And then also a nice thing about summarizing to show that his work covers all. Okay? You see the objective challenges matrix. So like this guy, reference number 1 covers only some, this one covers only some, but his work will cover all. So a table like this is helpful. Next. Okay, your main contribution, this is your thesis. And again, I always say, a picture paints 1,000 words. Have diagrams. Next. What do you do in there? You show your main design. Your main design must fit one diagram. And its architecture should be, examiners want to know what are the components. So show the components. It's essentially an architecture. And then you support with some workflow. You also have to cover, you have to say whether is this a quantum leap, or is it an extension, or it can also, you can have a PhD of explication, explaining. And in this chapter, you also show why it's better. It can be better in one of these ways. It can be you have formalized it, so therefore it's better. To formalize, it must be more mathematical based. Or it can be better because it's simpler. Because of simplicity, you have made life simple. It can be better because it's more convenient, like swap, plug and play. It is more efficient. Of course, you have to prove all this. But say it out. It can be better because it's more better maintainability. Or it defines universal standards, or it's more generic. So one of these to be better. Next. Whose was this? You also? Yes, he's also. So this knowledge service multiplexer. This came from him, his diagram. So this was his thesis. I've been reusing this for data mining multiplexer. Proposing data mining multiplexer, and anything that many people use different algorithms, you can always propose a multiplexer. This is a guaranteed PhD. You can do a multiplexer of anything, it's a guaranteed PhD. Not easy though. Okay, next. This is another example. What is it? Oh, this is his also. Huh? Yes. This is also what? I forgot already. Oh, this is tacit. You can ask him this. He came up with this challenge scenarios. I'm surrounded by doctors now, so I can challenge them. Okay, these are another example. This is Yakong, Bilingual Knowledge Bank. These are all from thesis, previous thesis. So have a diagram. It also helps your self-focus. All right, implementation. If your design is elegant, show you can implement. But if you know how to implement, you have to show proof that it works. Right? Okay, next. So, what are the main points in implementation? First of all, of course, the platform. And why you chose that platform. It can be convenient, scalable, efficient, or interoperable. And then you raise some implementation issues. What are the difficulties? Also say whether it's deployment or prototype. So, and the implementation strengths. If you have some mathematics formal base, good. But usually it doesn't happen. Or some specific code components. So you have to bring out this. Don't let the examiner try to figure out what. So always bring out your strengths. Next. In the test, there has to be a test. Sample size. There's also a favorite question by examiners. Your sample size too small. You have to list the test, justify. Anyway, you can read this. So, and there are standard tests. One of the favorites is I forgot already. The true, false, whatever. True, positive, false, positive. That's a. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Next. Normally, when I examine, I let someone else do that part. I don't like it. Conclusion. There has to be a lot of pages, words. You need to stop somewhere. Okay? Next. Okay, what do you do? Conclusion and future work. First, you summarize. Not a chapter by chapter anymore. You summarize your deliverables. And you summarize what your contributions are. That's in your summary. And then you work, what is the future work? You give ideas on how to resolve the shortcomings, if you had time, if you had given more time, prioritize closely related components in the roadmap, and so on. Next, actually here. So these are the things that you do, you put in your future work. What could have been done given more time? Completing your current work. Another one is extending current work. You can extend your current work either sideways into other areas of applications, and then also refining and adding to the going deeper. It shows, this is also important because it shows that you know what you are doing. And it's also, if you are becoming a lecturer somewhere, it's also what your future PhD students will be doing. Right? For my PhD way back in God knows, before the war, I had all my PhD students were just continuing what I had in this future work. Next. Okay, main message. My main messages. Next. Main slides for Viva. When you prepare your Viva slides, 6 slides first. And then after that, you add the one in between. You give your thesis roadmap, is how to read the thesis. Literature survey to situate the research, another slide. This slide is very, very key. Spend more time on this one. And then you have a design component diagram, implementation design, and test design. So you have 6 basic slides. And then the rest are to fill up these. Next. So what are you doing, really? Why you situate the research is giving the message. This is the area I'm working on, so don't you dare, don't ask me anything else. So that's why it has to come out. You give the chapter summary, this is how I got there. This is how you should read the thesis. That's the message, hidden message. You give the component design, this is how my solution is considered. So these are my main contributions. Don't read elsewhere. And then bring out the main R part. This is my key research, so give me my PhD. So, so put this in slides. Okay? These messages I give to you, but you do that. Yeah. These are some. Go back. No, next. Some, yeah. This title used to be some recent examples, but these are no longer recent. Okay. This one came from UPNM. She was a staff, did a PhD in UKM, but couldn't finish there. Came back, had problems, so I was doing research with some people on search and rescue, so I had to rescue this one. Actually, what I did for her was very simple. Color coding. You see, once you color coding, she was actually doing hybriding. Hybriding these two to get her contribution. So I said, to make life easy, you color code, so that next time people read, they know where the components from here, which one component from here, go. There. So this came from the blue, this came from the other one, and then you can see this. Next. And then this is how you go there. Then next. And this is how you implement. Her viva lasted 20 minutes because of color coding. Right? Next. Now that is the implementation. Nobody has to read. Okay. This is her, what's it called? The chapter by chapter summary. Okay. This is another one, also UPNM, also another unfortunate one who went to somewhere to do PhD and didn't finish, so I did another rescue job. She was doing, this is one area I really hated most, differential equations. I really hated it. So I helped her to show how she actually did her thing. And then I call this rumah pansa. You see the flats, the different floors, show how you construct. So same thing. Go on. This we were doing research in this one. This is also the search and rescue operations to show where people are working, where. Which area? Because when you say search and rescue, it can be many areas. So here, so we had, I think I had 3 master students, so they worked in different areas. Okay, next. Also same. Okay. That's just pointing out. Okay, that's it. I want to show you, no, not yet. I'll show you another one. Someone volunteered to give, I asked me. So if you know who this is, just pretend you don't know who he or she is. I don't know. He or she do you know whether it's a he or she? Don't know. Good. Okay. Here, classification of reviews for cross-domain, imbalance, whatever. My comment. Title is unclear. The title must bring out what are you solving? You are using what? Yes, using what is deep learning. Contributing what? your title should have these 3 points very clear. Okay, next. Introduction, fine. Except that it can be better, more directed. If follow what I was going just now. Here is something is missing, scope is missing. Okay, gone. You don't start with sentiment analysis. You have to motivate first. Because otherwise people will be wondering, why are you talking about sentiment analysis? In fact, the title also talks about sarcasm. So the first thing you have to do is actually say why you need sentiment analysis, and then how to focus into sarcasm. Why is it? Next. Statement of research. First, have to explain why these pose problems. That's justifying the research. Okay. This is too big a jump from sentiment analysis to sarcasm. You have to actually work on sentiment analysis, present sentiment analysis, and then motivate, and then move towards sarcasm. Where does sarcasm come in? Next. Go. Gone. Yeah, should have this table. Summarize all the earlier points into this table. Yeah, need a diagram. Always use diagrams. Literature review, gone. Yeah, this is okay. Yeah. Yeah, need to summarize the research gaps and objectives are justified. Yeah, at the end of your discussion, the chapter 4, you have to summarize that you have completed your job. Yeah, need to mention some conjectures, your hypothesis. Why, what will be proposed for each of the objectives. Next. This is okay, but you have to point out where you are working, what is your contribution. Otherwise, this is considered as textbook material. Same thing here. Also make clear what cross-domain problems are. Same thing. Next. Yeah. Not clear the purpose of these slides. When you do a research proposal, every slide has to have a message. When I present, normally I write the message at the bottom in yellow. Okay. Next. Same thing. Huh? Make clear the problems of imbalanced data. Not clear how this is how you zoom into sarcasm from next. Yeah, and you have to indicate how sarcasm is to be detected. Yeah, time for methodology diagram and so on. Also a diagram will help. Mention why this method is chosen. Now, you have to bring out the academic teaching, always. Academic and technical contributions. That's very key. When you show your contributions, you have to bring out what is the academic part. Next. Again, same. Yeah, need conclusion and future work. Go on. Okay, next. Yeah, here I've indicated some doing how to do chapter 1. Go on. Yeah. Okay, so this is unclear. The handling data, this is secondary. Cross domains and imbalance. Classification is a confusing term within the title. Next. Yeah, so need to first build up the problem. Then there is a need for sentiment direct detection in product reviews. And sarcasm is of interest. Why is it of interest? And you want to say that there are techniques for sentiment analysis, and deep learning is probably one of the better ones. Go on. Then you have this, and presumably deep learning as well as other techniques face problems when dealing with cross domains and imbalanced data. Make that come out. Next. Yeah. I say only then can the following be justified. Okay. Next. There should be conjectures. The hypothesis part has to be there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now, really the end. What is this? Questions? Was that 1 hour? Any questions? No questions? No questions? Good. Yes.
Hello, yeah. Prof, talk about the graduate on time. Certain, most of the supervisor and the student we face is especially during the proposal review.
Beginning.
Yeah, beginning.
The 3 months.
Yes,
Yeah.
we usually take longer months, longer than that period. There's a struggle to position the gap, to situating the research gap and identify the initial solutions. So usually take longer time, and towards the second part, we call research review, before you have Viva. And then that time, most of the students will try to rush through. And the first part, they try to drag on. This is the situation that we face. The second part, research review, usually the supervisor have a lot of hesitation or comment before they need to submit for their thesis, but student lacking of time already. But the beginning, the supervisor wishing them to finish earlier, but they're dragging on. This is certain dilemma, and also the way of doing bottom up and top down. Initially, in the proposal review, looking at problem more than top down. Then take a lot of time to identify the scope. And at the end of the research review, research review, usually you need to come out a prototype or implement, and a lot of also candidate students, they start on the implementation and test. These are some problem for them to extend more than the time that they can. Usually 3 years, they will drag more than that, 2.5 or 3 years. So what's your comment on this?
On the first part, the second part is more difficult. On the first part for the research proposal, what I do, well, I teach research methodology at Sunway and places. What I do when I teach, I think the key is presenting. You force the students to present, because the minute when you present, your ideas start begin to crystallize. So what I do when I do research methodology, what I do with the students, I just teach them what to do, about a few slides, and then from then on, they have to present. Their supervisors don't like it much, but it works. It works. So every class, they take turns to present. Once they present, then I can ask questions or I can give comments. Then it begins to crystallize. In fact, some of the supervisors say, "Oh, you are like that, huh?" So it really helps. Once they present, they are forced to actually crystallize the ideas, and you also crystallize the ideas. So always present. And meeting supervisors is very, very key during this period. Very, very key. It's more like negotiating a contract. You come up with a research proposal to say, okay, I am going to do this. And you make a declaration to everybody that you are going to do this. So, present. Present. The second part, I don't know how to, because this is a lot has to do with discipline. I don't know. With my students, because I always meet them. If you meet them, the supervisors force the meetings. It's always, my students always, every 2 weeks must meet. At least every 2 weeks must meet, and there must be added value each time you meet. Cannot show the previous one. And then you can guide. So that's why everybody within 3 years. So the relationship between supervisor and the student must be there. Students also tend to run away for some reason. I don't know. At UPNM, I tended to rescue staff who went for PhD and come back, couldn't finish. But at Sunway, I tend to gather students who ran away from supervisors. So I'm still supervising some of them. Any more questions? Yeah. Mike. No, because it's a live feed. People want to hear.
Okay, Prof, just simple question. In chapter 1 and chapter 5, you mentioned that in both chapters we mentioned about contributions. But whenever we write, what are the difference between writing contribution in the first chapter and also the last
Future
chapter?
tense, last chapter, past tense.
Okay, that's all, is it? Okay.
That's all.
Okay.
It's the chapter 1, you write the contributions, is to fix this in the head of the examiner. The last chapter is to remind that I've done it.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a repeat, but different tense.
Okay.
Future tense and past
sort
tense.
of like to actually, in the first chapter, sort of like what you just mentioned, or write what the examiner can expect.
This will be the
thesis.
contributions of this work. This will be the contributions.
Yeah.
And then in the last, the work has contributed the following.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Oh, never try to avoid the use of we inside the thesis. Use passive. Either use passive or use impersonal. It is believed that it is whatever. Never use we. Okay, cukup ah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emeritus Dr. Zaharin Yusuf, on the inspiring talk. Before you leave the stage, Dr. Yeah, please. Before you leave the stage, we would like to invite Professor Dr. Bahari to present a token of appreciation to Professor Emeritus Dr. Zaharin Yusuf. Thank you again. Thank you again, Prof. Dr. Datu Dr. Bahari and Prof. Emeritus Dr. Zaharin Yusuf. You may take a seat.